It's almost midnight. Tina locks her store. Engines roar. Sirens scream. A motorcycle skids to a stop right in front of her. The rider, tall, bleeding, desperate, stares straight at her. Behind him, police lights race closer. Tina freezes. Run. Call 911? The man stumbles toward her, begging without words. And in that split second, she makes a choice she can never take back. She unlocks the door. He falls inside. The sirens roar past. But what Tina doesn't know is this. That single act of kindness won't end tonight. Because tomorrow, 500 bikers will be standing outside her store. Why are they here? For revenge, or for her? Every day, we drop stories you won't hear anywhere else. Don't miss the next one. Subscribe now, and stay with us. Let's now continue. Tina yanked the stranger into the dim store, her hands shaking so hard she almost dropped the keys. The door clicked shut just as the first set of patrol cars flew past. Sirens wailed and lights flickered through the dusty front windows. Hawk's bike was half hidden in the alley, smoke rising from its cracked exhaust. If they doubled back, the police would see it. Inside, Hawk leaned against the counter, breathing heavy. Blood ran down his arm, staining the floor. He pulled off his helmet, his long dark hair clinging to sweat. His eyes were cold, sharp, but strangely calm, locked on Tina. "Call me Hawk," he said, voice rough but steady. That was it. No thank you. No explanation. Tina whispered, "You're hurt. They'll come back. You need to go." But Hawk shook his head. Not yet. Her mind raced. Who was this man? What had she dragged into her store? Outside, the sound of engines faded, but not completely. Somewhere down the street, a radio crackled, a door slammed. They weren't gone. They were circling. "What did you do?" Tina asked. Hawk tightened the strap on his torn jacket, ignoring the blood. "Wrong question," he muttered. "Ask what they'll do to you if they find me here." Tina's stomach dropped. The store was her livelihood. Her whole world fit inside these four walls. One arrest could take it all away. She almost opened the door and shoved him out. Almost. But the look on his face stopped her. Less fear, more a warning. He wasn't hiding from just the police. He was hiding from something worse. Minutes crawled. Tina pressed a towel to his arm, trying to slow the bleeding. He winced but didn't move. Finally, Hawk spoke again. "You should have locked me out. You don't know what you've just done." The weight of his words filled the silence. Then his eyes rolled back, and he collapsed to the floor. Tina's breath caught. She crouched beside him, checking his pulse. He was alive but weak. She needed help. But who could she call? The cops. Impossible. An ambulance? Too many questions. The store phone sat on the counter, glowing red in the dark. Her hand hovered over it. One call, and this nightmare would end. But what if he was right? What if calling brought her more trouble than keeping him hidden? She glanced out the front window. 2 patrol cars had stopped at the intersection. Officers stepped out, scanning the street, their flashlights cutting across the alley. They were too close. She ducked down, pressing her back against the counter. Hawk lay limp beside her. If they checked the alley, they'd find his bike. If they found his bike, they'd come inside. Tina held her breath. One officer's light slid across the bricks. It stopped. Her chest pounded. Then, an engine roared in the distance. Another motorcycle. The officers spun toward the noise, jumped back into their cars, and sped off. The sound faded. Silence returned. But Tina didn't move. Not yet. Her hands trembled as she realized what had just happened. Hawk wasn't safe. Neither was she. She dragged him to the back room, laying him on the cot she kept for late shifts. His jacket shifted, revealing patches on the back. A skull. Red and white letters. She didn't need to read the words to know what they meant. She'd seen enough headlines. Hell's Angels. Her throat tightened. She had let one of them inside. Why him? Why her store? And what happened if the police came back tomorrow, asking questions she couldn't answer? She pulled a chair up beside the cot, watching his chest rise and fall. His face, lined with scars, looked older in the dim light. Not some reckless kid on a stolen bike. A man who had seen wars on the road. Every instinct told her to get out. Walk away, lock the doors, and let the night erase this mistake. But another voice whispered, if she abandoned him, what would that make her? Morning crept in through the blinds, painting the store in dull gray. Hawk was still out cold. Tina checked the street and saw it's clear. The patrol cars were gone. She turned back. Hawk stirred, muttering words she couldn't catch. His hand twitched, reaching for something invisible. Then his eyes snapped open. He grabbed her wrist, startling her. His grip was iron. You don't know what you've just done, he repeated, voice sharper this time. Tina yanked her hand back, heart pounding. Then tell me. Who are you? Why are they after you? But Hawk sat up, his jaw locked, his eyes distant. Too late for questions. You opened that door. Now you're in it. Before she could demand answers, he pushed himself to his feet, staggering but steady enough to walk. He picked up his helmet, slipped it under his arm, and looked at her one last time. You won't see me again. Not like this. Then he was gone. The store door closed behind him. Tina stood frozen in the silence, her mind spinning. Relief mixed with dread. He was gone, but what had he dragged into her life? The hours crawled. She cleaned the blood from the floor, threw away the towel, and tried to forget the night. By mid-morning, the store was open, customers drifting in as if nothing had happened. But Tina couldn't shake his words. You don't know what you've just done. What did he mean? What had she done? Around noon, she got her answer. The sound started low, like distant thunder. Then it grew louder, shaking the glass jars on the shelves. Engines. Dozens. Hundreds. Customers froze, eyes wide, before rushing out the door. Tina stepped outside, heart in her throat. The street was filling with motorcycles. Not 10. Not 20. 500. A sea of black leather and chrome stretched down the block, engines rumbling like a storm. And at the front, Hawk. He sat tall on his bike, helmet off, eyes fixed on her. Tina couldn't move. She couldn't breathe. 500 bikers had come to her store. But why? To thank her? Or to take her down? Tina stood in the narrow glow of her store's flickering light. Hawk leaned heavily against the counter, breathing raggedly, his helmet finally pulled off. His face was weathered, cut across the cheek, eyes fierce but dimming. He looked like a man who had carried too much weight for too long. The red and blue lights swept across the storefront windows. Sirens screamed closer. Tina's heart pounded. Don't let them find me here, Hawk whispered. His voice was gravelly, broken, but urgent. Tina's hands shook. She wasn't the kind of woman who broke rules. She'd built her life on doing things right, paying bills on time, keeping the store afloat, staying invisible. And now, in the space of a breath, she had invited chaos into her world. The patrol car screeched outside. Doors slammed. Boots hit pavement. Police! Open up! Tina swallowed. Her mind screamed to hand him over. But her heart said something different. Stay quiet, she mouthed. Hawk pressed against the wall, his chest rising, blood dripping on the tile. The officers shone flashlights through the glass. One rattled the locked door. "Tina, you in there? You see anything?" Her throat tightened. She knew these cops. They bought coffee from her some mornings. And now they were asking her to betray a man she didn't even know. Her silence stretched. Seconds felt like hours. The officers waited. One cursed under his breath. Then they turned back toward their car. Engines revved. Tires squealed away. Tina exhaled so sharply she almost collapsed. Hawk looked at her, eyes steady now, piercing. "You just changed everything," he said. But Tina didn't know how true those words were. Because what she didn't know was, this man wasn't just any biker. He was tied to something far larger than she could imagine. And the next morning, her life would no longer be her own. What would you do if helping one stranger meant putting your entire life on the line the very next day? The morning came too fast. Tina hadn't slept. Every creak in the night made her flinch. Every shadow on the wall made her think of police or bikers breaking down her door. But the sun came up, and with it, the weight of routine. She dragged herself into the store, flipped the sign to "Open," and tried to breathe normally. Coffee brewed, bread shelves stacked, the hum of refrigerators filled the silence. For a few hours, nothing happened. People came in, bought milk, bought cigarettes. Nobody asked about last night. Maybe, just maybe, it was over. Then she heard it. Engines. At first, faint, like a storm far away. Then louder. Dozens. Hundreds. The sound swallowed the street. Her hand dropped the can of beans she was shelving. It clattered against the floor. She walked to the window and pulled the blind just enough to see. Bikes. Lined up across the street. Chrome and black stretching block to block. And at the front of him, Hawk. Helmet off now. Eyes locked on her store like he'd been standing guard all night. The doorbell jingled. He stepped inside. She didn't move. He didn't look at her shelves, her floor, and her customers. He walked straight to the counter like it belonged to him. And then he dropped it. A leather bag. Heavy. Dusty. The kind you see in old movies when drug deals go wrong. It landed with a dull thud. The zipper slid open just enough for Tina to see the stacks inside. Bundled cash. More money than she'd seen in her entire life. She whispered, "What is this?" Hawk's voice was calm, too calm. "You saved me. That makes you family now." Her chest went tight. "No. I didn't do it for this. I don't want your money. I don't want your family. I just want to live my life." But Hawk didn't blink. "You think you had a choice? Saving me tied you to us. Whether you want it or not, you're part of this now." Her eyes darted to the window. Behind Hawk, shadows of bikers leaned on their machines, waiting. Their presence wasn't loud. It was heavier than that. Silent. Watching. She shook her head. "You don't understand. People around here, they'll see you, they'll think I'm." "They already think," Hawk cut her off. "The second you opened that door last night, you crossed the line. You're in it, Tina. Doesn't matter if you want out. There's no out." He shoved the bag closer. She stared at it, refusing to touch it. Hawk leaned in. "Take it. Use it. Or leave it. But you'll need it sooner than you think." Then, as if the moment was over, he turned. Walked to the door. The rumble outside grew as the engines roared to life, one by one, in sync like thunder rolling through the street. And then they were gone. Tina stood alone with the bag on the counter. She wanted to push it off. Pretend it wasn't real. But she didn't. She just stood there, staring. Customers trickled in later, cautious. Some glanced at the bag. Some pretended not to see. A few left quicker than they came. By noon, word had already started to spread. She could feel it. Neighbors are looking at her longer than usual. Conversations stopped when she walked past. She shoved the bag under the counter. Out of sight, but not out of mind. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. One message. Keep it safe. They'll come looking for it. Her hands went cold. Who sent it? Hawk. Someone else? She didn't reply. She shoved the phone away and forced herself back to work. But every sound outside made her jump. Every time the doorbell jingled, she half expected a cop, or a biker, or someone worse. At 4 p.m., it happened. A man walked in. Not a regular. Not even a customer. Just wrong. Mid-40s, scarred knuckles, faded jacket. His eyes went straight to the counter. "Where's Hawk?" he asked. Tina froze. "I don't know what you're talking about." He smirked. "Wrong answer." He leaned in. "You got something that doesn't belong to you." Her mouth went dry. "I don't know what you mean." But his eyes flicked down. To the counter. To the place where the bag had been before she shoved it under. He smiled like he already knew. And then, without another word, he left. No purchase. No explanation. Just gone. But it didn't feel over. It felt like the beginning. That night, Tina didn't go home right away. She stayed in the store, sitting in the back room with the bag in front of her. She stared at it until her eyes hurt. She wanted to throw it away. Burn it. But what if Hawk came back for it? What if that man came back? And then, the phone buzzed again. Another message. "Don't trust anyone. Not even them." Her heart slammed in her chest. Not even who? Hawk. His crew. The man from earlier? She wanted answers, but all she had were more questions. The bag sat in the middle of the table, heavy with money and heavier with trouble. She leaned back, whispering to herself, "What did I do?" The walls felt like they were closing in. But the truth was worse. The walls weren't closing in. The world outside was. And soon, someone would come through her door again. And when they did, she would have to choose. Keep the money, or lose everything. Because Hawk was right. She'd need it sooner than she thought. If you woke up tomorrow and someone forced you into a family you never asked for, would you keep their money, or risk what happens if you give it back? Morning came sharp and cruel. Tina's store should have been busy, but by 9 o'clock the aisles were half empty. The usual chatter was gone. No laughter, no neighborhood gossip. People came in, glanced at her, and left with little more than a loaf of bread. Some didn't come in at all. Across the street, 2 women stood whispering. Their eyes cut toward her windows, then back to each other. She pretended not to notice. But she felt it. The distance. The judgment. The story was out. Last night's noise hadn't just been heard. It had been seen. And in a city like Memphis, word travels faster than truth. By noon, the knock came. Not Hawk. Not bikers. Police. 2 officers, clean uniforms, cold eyes. They stepped in like they owned the place. "You Tina Hayes?" She nodded, her throat dry. "We got reports you were seen aiding and abetting a known fugitive." Her stomach dropped. "Last night. Corner of 3rd and Maple. Motorcycle. Ring a bell." She shook her head fast. "I was home. Sleeping. I don't know anything about that." The taller officer smirked. "Funny thing. Half the neighborhood says different." She froze. Half the neighborhood? Who? The shorter one leaned closer, voice low. Word of advice? People who protect men like him don't last long in this town. And then, just like that, they left. No arrest. No citation. Just words sharp enough to cut. She locked the door behind them, her hands trembling. That was when the first real loss hit. By evening, 3 customers she'd known for years walked in, saw her face, and turned right back out. She wanted to shout, "I didn't ask for this." But no one would believe her. Because in their eyes, the truth was simple: she'd chosen her side. By nightfall, she sat alone in the store, shelves full, and register empty. The streets outside were too quiet. And then, glass shattered. A brick flew through the front window, exploding across the floor. Tina screamed and ducked. She rushed forward, glass crunching under her shoes. The brick lay in the middle of the aisle. Something was tied to it. A note. Her hands shook as she pulled it free. "Stay out of business that isn't yours." Her knees went weak. She staggered back, clutching the paper. That's when headlights cut across the window. A car. Slow. She dropped the note and killed the lights. The car crawled past, silent. She couldn't see the faces inside. But she knew. Whoever threw that brick wasn't finished. She didn't sleep. Every sound outside made her think they were coming back. At dawn, she unlocked the store again. Not because she wanted to, but because if she closed, it would be proof. Proof she had something to hide. And if the neighborhood turned against her, she'd lose everything. By 10 a.m., Hawk was back. No warning. No knock. Just the door slamming open and the rumble of boots across her floor. He saw the shattered window first. Then the brick. His jaw clenched. "Who did this?" "I don't know," she said. Her voice cracked. "I don't want to know. I just want this to stop." Hawk picked up the note, read it once, and crushed it in his fist. "They touched your place. That means they touched us." "No," Tina snapped. "Not us. Me. I'm not part of this." But Hawk only shook his head. "They think you are. That's enough." He turned toward the door. "I'll handle it." She grabbed his arm. "No. Please. If you do something, it comes back to me. Don't you get it? Every move you make drags me deeper." For a second, his eyes softened. But only for a second. "You think staying quiet will keep you safe? It won't." And then he was gone, engines roaring back to life outside as the bikers vanished down the block. She slumped against the counter, her breath shaking. But that wasn't the end of the day. By afternoon, 2 men came in. Not police. Not bikers. Different. Rough. The kind who looked like they'd done bad things and weren't sorry. One of them smiled too wide. "Afternoon, miss. Heard you got a donation last night. Thought maybe you'd share." Her pulse spiked. The bag. Hawk's money. They knew. "I don't know what you're talking about." The man's smile dropped. He leaned across the counter, close enough for her to smell the cigarettes on his breath. "You got one chance. Hand it over, or things get ugly." Her hand twitched toward the bat she kept under the counter. He noticed. Smiled again. "You really think you'll swing that before I break your arm?" Silence stretched. Then the other man tapped the counter with a single finger. "We'll be back." And they left. She collapsed into the chair behind her, shaking, staring at the bat in her hand. If she gave up the money, Hawk would kill her. If she kept it, these men would come back. Either way, she was trapped. That night, the store was quiet again. Too quiet. She swept up the last of the glass, locked the door, and turned to head home. And that's when she saw it. Another note. This one wasn't on a brick. It was on her door, pinned with a knife. She pulled it free, her heart hammering. 3 words. "We're not done." Her hand shook so badly she almost dropped it. She looked out into the street. Empty. Too empty. And then, movement. A figure in the distance. Standing still. Watching. She couldn't tell if it was Hawk, a cop, or someone worse. But whoever it was, they weren't leaving. And neither was the danger. When everyone around you turns their back, and the people who want you gone know where you sleep, what choice do you make? Stand your ground, or run before they strike? Tina didn't wait for Hawk to come back this time. She marched straight to the warehouse on the edge of town, where the engines always seemed to gather after dark. The smell of oil and smoke clung to the air. Leather men leaned on bikes, their eyes following her as she pushed past. Inside, Hawk was bent over a map, voices around him hushed when they saw her. She slammed her hand on the table. Enough. His head lifted. Calm. Controlled. Like he'd been expecting her. "I'm not part of this," she said. Her voice was sharp, louder than she meant. "You used me. You dragged me into your mess, and I want out. Right now." Hawk studied her for a long moment, then leaned back in his chair. "You think this is about choice?" Her fists clenched. "It is. And I choose no." He exhaled slowly, like the weight of years sat on his chest. "You want to know why they're hunting me? Why the cops circle your block? Why bricks get thrown through your window?" Tina froze, the words catching her breath. Hawk's voice dropped lower. "I wasn't running from the badge. I was running from the badge that's dirty. Cops that take cash from gangs. Cops that look the other way when kids get trafficked. I stood against them. Thought my brothers would stand with me." His eyes hardened. They didn't. For the first time, Tina saw something raw under the leather and scars. A man who wasn't just dangerous, but betrayed. "You saved me when even my own wouldn't," he said. "That makes you different. That makes you family." She shook her head. "No. That makes me a target." Silence stretched, thick and heavy. Finally, Hawk leaned forward. "You're right. You're in danger. But not because you open that door. Because you think you can walk away. And in this world." He let the words hang, unfinished but sharp enough to cut. "Walking away isn't that simple." Tina's throat tightened. For a second, she didn't see the biker. She saw the man. Wounded. Cornered. But sympathy didn't erase the fear curling inside her. She turned and stormed out. Engines growled behind her, but no one stopped her. The night air hit her face like ice. She drove home with every streetlight flickering overhead, her grip tight on the wheel. The city felt emptier than usual. Too quiet. She pulled up outside her apartment, killed the engine, and stepped out. The sound of her keys jingled in her hand. That's when she felt it. Eyes. Watching. She turned fast. Across the street, in the shadows, a figure stood still. Not Hawk. Not a neighbor. Someone else. They didn't move. Didn't speak. Just watched as she unlocked her door and stepped inside. Her hand shook so hard she dropped the keys twice. And when she finally locked the door behind her, she knew. This wasn't over. Someone had followed her home. When danger knows your address, and you can't tell if it's friend, foe, or something worse, what do you do when the knock finally comes? It was just past midnight when Tina pulled down the last shutter on her store. She thought the night was finally calm. Then she heard it, the crunch of boots on gravel. She turned and froze. A group of men was waiting, blocking the sidewalk. Leather vests, hard faces, and eyes that didn't bother hiding their intent. They stepped forward, slow and deliberate, cutting off her path. "Where's your friend?" one of them asked, his voice sharp. "The one you sheltered." Tina's chest tightened. She didn't answer. Another man shoved his hands in his pockets and leaned forward. "Don't play dumb. You opened your door to the wrong man. Now you pay his debt." They surrounded her. The air felt heavier with each step they took. She could see the outline of a weapon under one man's jacket. She gripped her keys like a blade, though she knew it wouldn't save her. One of them reached out and grabbed her arm. She yanked back, but his grip was strong. Just as his partner moved closer, a beam of light cut across the street. Then another, and another. Headlights. Dozens of them. The ground shook with the thunder of engines. The roar grew louder until it drowned out everything else, the voices, the tension, even Tina's pounding heart. Motorcycles streamed in from both ends of the block, swallowing the rival gang in a cage of steel and chrome. Red taillights glowed like fire as rows of bikes lined up. The Hell's Angels. Engines idled low, rumbling like warning growls. The rival men shifted, their confidence cracking as they realized they were outnumbered 10-1. Then one bike rolled to the front. Hawk. He killed his engine and climbed off slowly, his boots heavy on the asphalt. He pulled off his cracked helmet and stood tall, blood still on his arm from days ago, his presence commanding the night. He walked straight to Tina, stopping just between her and the men who had cornered her. His voice cut through the noise. "Touch her," he said calmly, "and you answer to all of us." Silence. The rival leader spat on the ground, glaring at Hawk. "This isn't over," he said, his voice thin now, stripped of its earlier swagger. He signaled to his crew. One by one, they backed away, disappearing into the shadows. The Angels stayed still, engines humming low, until the last man was gone. Only then did Hawk turn to Tina. She hadn't moved since the moment headlights filled the street. Her heart was racing, her breath uneven, her mind struggling to catch up with what had just happened. "You're safe now," Hawk said. But she didn't feel safe. Not even close. As the bikers lingered, she looked at the wall of engines and leather around her store. Yes, they had saved her. Yes, they had chased off men who wanted her hurt. But the truth was written all over the scene. She wasn't free. She was wrapped tighter in their world than ever before. The Angels weren't just protecting her. They were claiming her. When Hawk nodded to his men and the bikes slowly peeled away, the silence they left behind was heavier than the roar of their engines. Tina stayed on the sidewalk, shaken, watching until the last red light faded into the distance. She finally unlocked her door and stepped back inside, but her hands wouldn't stop trembling. She knew tonight wasn't the end. It was only a warning. One choice had saved her life. But that same choice had chained her to a future she never asked for. And as she stood alone in the quiet of her store, one question echoed in her mind. When help comes at this price, is it really help? Or just another kind of trap? The next morning, the store looked like a storm had torn through it. A cracked window, shelves knocked sideways, glass scattered across the floor. Tina swept in silence, every scrape of the broom reminding her of the night before. She thought she was alone until the low growl of an engine stopped outside. The bell over the door jingled. Hawk walked in. Behind him, the rest of the Angels stood outside, their presence filling the street like a warning. Hawk set something heavy on the counter. The same leather bag. The same stack of bills she had tried to refuse. "You've got a choice," he said, his voice low but steady. "Take our protection, live under our shadow, or stand alone. But if you stand alone, you'd better understand something. Your enemies aren't finished. And you don't even know half their names yet." Tina kept sweeping, her back to him. Her hand tightened on the broom handle. "You think that sounds like a choice?" she asked. "It is," Hawk answered. It's just not the kind you wanted. She set the broom down and finally faced him. His expression was unreadable, hard, yet not without a trace of respect. The men outside shifted their weight, their eyes fixed on the store, waiting to see what she'd do. She looked around her store. The cracked glass. The shelves she had to restock. The counters she'd scrubbed for years, the same ones her father once worked behind. Every inch of it carried her sweat, her time, her life. And now, every inch of it carried their shadow. Her eyes dropped to the bag. It sat there, fat with cash, glowing under the morning light like a poisoned gift. Slowly, she pushed it back across the counter toward him. Her voice was firm, steady. I don't want your money. I don't want your war. I just want peace. Hawk's jaw tightened. For the first time, he looked less like a leader and more like a man caught between duty and something heavier. Peace, he said, almost tasting the word. I wanted that once too. The silence between them stretched. The only sound was the faint rumble of the bikes idling outside. Finally, Hawk pulled the bag off the counter and swung it over his shoulder. His eyes stayed on her. You saved me when even my own brothers might not have. That makes you different. That makes you family. But if peace is what you're asking for, he paused, choosing his words carefully, then peace is what you'll have. Just don't mistake it for freedom. He turned and walked to the door. The others were still waiting. As he stepped out, he gave them a signal with a single nod. Engines roared to life, loud and steady, before the bikes began rolling away one by one. Tina didn't move. She stood rooted to the counter, her eyes still on the space where the bag had been. She had rejected them. She had spoken her truth. But the cost of that choice was yet to come. The last sound she heard was Hawk's bike fading into the distance. The store was quiet again. Too quiet. She touched the counter, her hand trembling. She had gotten what she asked for, or had she? Because deep down, she knew peace wasn't something a man like Hawk could hand her. Peace was fragile, a promise written in the air. And in a city where enemies hid behind every corner, how long could her refusal truly protect her? That night, she walked home alone. She turned every corner twice, glancing behind her. When she finally reached her front step, her stomach sank. A shadow moved near her fence. Someone was waiting. And in that moment, one thought burned through her mind. When you turn away from power, do you find peace? Or do you simply walk into a different kind of danger? The shadow outside her fence didn't move. For a long second, Tina stood frozen, her keys clenched in her hand. Then, slowly, a figure stepped into the light. It wasn't a rival. It wasn't the police. It was Hawk. He leaned against the fence, arms crossed, as if he'd been waiting all along. Relax, he said, his voice calm. If it wasn't me, you wouldn't have made it to your front door. Tina's shoulders dropped, a mix of relief and frustration rushing through her. I told you. I don't want this. I don't want you watching over me. Hawk pushed off the fence and walked closer, stopping just at the edge of her porch. The distance between them was heavy, not with threat, but with something unspoken. You can hate me for it. You can push me away. But the truth is simple. Because of what you did, you'll never be alone again. That's not protection. That's a consequence. Tina shook her head, fighting the sting of tears she didn't want him to see. All I did was drag a bleeding man into the dark. If I'd known it would cost me this much, I would have left you in the street. He didn't flinch. He just nodded, as if he'd been expecting those words. Maybe you would have. But you didn't. And that choice tied you to us forever. The silence stretched between them. In the distance, a dog barked. A car rolled past and disappeared. The world kept moving while the two of them stood in a quiet war neither had asked for. Finally, Hawk spoke again. His voice was softer now. "I won't force you. You don't want our money, fine. You don't want our war, fine. But the people after me, they'll come after you too. You think walking away gives you peace. What it really gives you is a target on your back." Tina's eyes narrowed. "So what? My only options are to live under your shadow or die without it." Hawk looked at her for a long time, then gave a small, sad smile. "No. Your only option is to live with the truth." He stepped back toward his bike parked under the streetlight. He swung his leg over, started the engine, and let it rumble for a moment before speaking again. "This is the last time I'll stand here. You want peace. Then peace is yours. But don't confuse quiet with safety." He revved the engine once, sharp and loud, then rolled slowly down the street. Tina stayed on her porch until the sound faded into nothing. The night was hers again, quiet, still, untouched. But the quiet felt different now. It felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, waiting for the ground to shift. The next morning, she opened her store. The glass had been replaced, the shelves straightened. Neighbors walked by, slower than usual, glancing at her with curiosity they didn't voice. Some came in to buy bread, some didn't. The silence hung heavier than the words they avoided saying. She carried on, as if her life had gone back to normal. But she knew normal had vanished the moment she pulled Hawk into her store. Days passed. The bikers didn't return. No rival gangs appeared. No cops came knocking. For the first time in weeks, the air felt still. One evening, as she locked up, she paused at the door. Across the street, parked in the shadow of an alley, a bike sat alone. No rider in sight. No sound. Just waiting. She smiled to herself, a small, tired smile. Hawk had kept his word. They were gone, but not really gone. That night, she closed her shop, turned off the lights, and sat in the dark for a long time. She thought about choices, about how one moment of compassion had tied her to people she didn't ask for, didn't want, yet somehow couldn't erase from her life. When she finally spoke, the words weren't for anyone else. They were for herself. "Peace," she whispered, "is never free. The question is, when it finally comes, will I even recognize it?" Sometimes, the family you never asked for finds you most unexpectedly. The real choice isn't whether to accept them or not. The real choice is whether you let that bond define you or destroy you. If this story moved you, subscribe, tell us where you're watching from, and come back tomorrow for another powerful story.